Hello. My fiancée told me her friends think I'm boring because I'm too nice, and that she needed to date a bad boy before settling down with me. I said okay, then canceled everything and started packing her things. When she realized what I'd done, she completely lost it. My name is Rowan. I am 33 and I work as a product designer for a mid-sized tech company in Manchester. My days are mostly spent between design software, meetings, and the occasional late deadline when a project is about to launch. Outside of work, I keep a pretty steady routine. I go to the gym a few times a week, cook most of my meals at home, and generally prefer quiet evenings over crowded bars. My fiancée is Lucy. She is 30 and works as an accountant for a regional financial firm. We have been together just over 4 years, and we got engaged 8 months ago. We moved into my apartment about 2.5 years back because it was closer to the city center and also closer to her office. Most of the furniture was originally mine, but over time our things blended together. Lucy has always been more social than I am. She goes out with coworkers fairly often and keeps a big group of friends from university and work. I never had a problem with that. My job can be mentally draining, and honestly, I am fine staying in some nights while she goes out. For most of our relationship, the balance worked. The first time something started feeling strange was maybe 2 months ago. Lucy began making these small comments about my personality when we were around her friends. Nothing directly hostile, just little remarks that were framed like jokes. At one dinner with 2 of her co-workers, she laughed and told them I was probably the calmest man in England. Then she added that I was so polite I would probably apologize to a chair if I bumped into it. Everyone laughed, including me, because at the time it seemed harmless. After that, it became a pattern. Whenever her friends were around, she would point out how predictable my schedule was, or how I never argued with anyone, or how I always tried to keep the peace. I figured it was just teasing. Then last Saturday night, Lucy came home from drinks with her friends and said something that made it clear those jokes were not really jokes. That was the moment everything started changing. Lucy got home around midnight that Saturday. I was still awake in the living room finishing up some design revisions on my laptop. A product launch deadline was coming up, and I had a few small adjustments to submit before Monday. She dropped her bag on the chair, kicked off her shoes, and walked straight into the kitchen without really acknowledging me. That was not unusual after a night out. What was unusual was the expression on her face. She looked amused in a way that felt directed at me. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Then she said something that honestly caught me off guard. She told me that earlier that night her friends had been talking about me again. Apparently, the general consensus was that I was nice, reliable, stable. Then she said the part that stuck with me. She said they also thought I was boring. Not in an apologetic way either. She said it almost like she expected me to laugh about it. I asked her what exactly she meant by that. She shrugged and said it was not a big deal. Just that compared to some of the guys her friends were dating, I was very calm and predictable. Then she added that a couple of them had joked that I was the kind of guy women settle down with after they have their fun. The way she said it was casual but deliberate, like she was testing how I would react. I closed my laptop and asked her if that was something she agreed with. She gave this half smile and said she could see their point. According to Lucy, I was extremely dependable, but I did not have any edge. Her exact wording was that I was almost too nice. I asked her why she was bringing this up now. That is when she said something that shifted the entire conversation into territory I honestly did not expect. She told me that sometimes she wondered what it would have been like if she had dated a bad boy before settling down. She said it in the most matter-of-fact tone imaginable, like she was talking about trying a different restaurant. I honestly thought she was joking at first, not because the idea itself was funny, but because of how casually she said it, like it was just an interesting thought she had while out with friends. So I asked her to repeat it. Lucy rolled her eyes a little and said I was already taking it too seriously. Then she sat down across from me at the kitchen table and explained what she meant. According to her, a lot of women go through a phase where they date exciting guys before eventually choosing someone stable. She said some of her friends had stories about reckless ex-boyfriends who were terrible partners, but still fun in their own way. Then she said something that made it clear this was not just a random conversation. She said she had never really experienced that kind of relationship. Lucy explained that every guy she dated before me was basically the same type of person. Responsible, predictable, safe. Then she looked straight at me and said I was probably the most extreme version of that. She said I was so calm and accommodating that sometimes it did not even feel like she was dating someone with any edge at all. I asked her what exactly she wanted me to do with that information. Lucy shrugged like it was obvious. Then she said the sentence that flipped a switch in my head. She said sometimes she wondered if she should have dated a bad boy before settling down with someone like me. I looked at her for a few seconds. Then I said okay. Not sarcastically. Not loudly. Just okay. Lucy seemed a little confused by how quickly I said it. But before she could say anything else, I stood up from the table. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed 2 of the empty moving boxes we still had stored in the closet, and started packing her things. Clothes first. Then the makeup bags on the dresser. At first, Lucy stayed in the kitchen. I could hear her moving around, probably expecting me to come back and continue the conversation. About 5 minutes later, she walked into the bedroom. She stopped in the doorway and stared at the open suitcase on the bed. Then she asked what I was doing. I told her I was helping her move out so she could go date the bad boy she felt like she missed out on. That was the moment she realized I was not joking. Lucy stood in the doorway staring at the suitcase on the bed like her brain needed a few seconds to catch up. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh either. More like the kind of laugh someone gives when they think the other person is being dramatic. She asked if I was seriously throwing a tantrum over a conversation. I kept folding her clothes and placing them into the suitcase. I told her I was not upset. I was simply responding to what she told me. If she felt like she needed to experience dating a bad boy before settling down, then she should be free to do that. Just not while living in my apartment and being engaged to me. That was when the smile disappeared. Lucy stepped further into the room and said I was being ridiculous. She said she had only been talking hypothetically and that normal people would understand that. I told her I understood perfectly. She said she felt like she missed out on a certain type of relationship experience. So I was removing the obstacle that was apparently standing in the way. Lucy crossed her arms and asked if I was seriously ending a 4-year relationship because of one conversation. I told her no. I was ending it because of the mindset behind the conversation. That seemed to irritate her more than anything else. She started saying I was overreacting and that her friends were right about me being too sensitive and too serious all the time. While she was talking, I finished packing the suitcase and zipped it closed. Then I picked it up, walked past her, and set it down next to the front door. Lucy followed me into the living room asking what exactly I thought I was doing. I grabbed the small box with the rest of her things and set that beside the suitcase. Then I opened the apartment door. I told her she should probably call one of the friends who thought I was boring. Maybe one of them knew a bad boy she could try dating. For a few seconds, she just stood there staring at the open door. Then she realized I was completely serious. That is when she completely lost it. Lucy went from confused to furious in about 3 seconds. She started asking if I had lost my mind. Then she demanded that I close the door and stop acting like an idiot. I stayed where I was. I told her she had just explained that she felt like she missed out on dating exciting men before settling down with someone stable. So I was giving her the opportunity to fix that. Lucy said that was not what she meant and that I was twisting her words. But the tone she used made it very clear that she was more angry about losing control of the situation than about the relationship itself. She pointed at the suitcase by the door and asked if I was seriously throwing her out in the middle of the night. I told her she had plenty of friends she had just been drinking with. One of them could probably pick her up. Then she switched tactics. Suddenly she started saying I was being cruel and unreasonable. She said couples talk about things and work through them instead of immediately ending relationships. I reminded her that she had not approached the conversation like someone trying to work through a problem. She had approached it like someone evaluating whether she had missed out on better options. That did not go over well. Lucy started raising her voice. She said this was exactly why her friends thought I was boring. According to her, I had no sense of humor, and I turned everything into some serious moral decision. While she was talking, I picked up the suitcase and placed it just outside the apartment door. Then I set the box next to it. That was when she realized I was not backing down. She stepped in front of the doorway and said I could not just kick her out like that because she lived here too. Technically, she was right about one thing. She had been living there. But the lease was only in my name, and every bill connected to the apartment was also in my name. So I told her she was welcome to come back tomorrow during the day to collect anything else she needed. But tonight she was leaving. Lucy stared at me for a long moment. Then the shouting really started. Lucy started yelling loud enough that I was honestly surprised none of the neighbors opened their doors. She accused me of being controlling. Then she switched to calling me dramatic. Then she started saying I was trying to punish her for being honest. I let her finish. Once she stopped long enough to breathe, I told her something very simple. If she believed she needed to date a bad boy before settling down, then I was clearly not the person she should be engaged to. That was not punishment. That was basic logic. She immediately tried to walk that statement back. Lucy said I was twisting what she said, and that she never said she actually wanted to go date someone else. She claimed she was just talking about the idea of it. But the problem was the way she had framed the whole conversation earlier. She had not sounded curious. She had sounded like she was evaluating whether she had made the right choice by committing to me. And once someone starts evaluating the relationship like that out loud, I do not see much point in pretending everything is fine. Lucy kept insisting that I was overreacting. Then she tried another angle. She told me that if I kicked her out, everyone would hear about it. Her friends, her coworkers, probably even our mutual friends. She said they would all think I was unstable for throwing away a 4-year relationship over a comment. I told her they were welcome to think whatever they wanted. That seemed to frustrate her even more. She kept trying to pull the conversation back into a normal argument where we could go in circles for another hour. But I was already done with the discussion. So I stepped aside from the doorway and pointed toward the hall. I told her again that she could come back tomorrow during the day to collect the rest of her things. Then I said something that finally made it clear the decision was final. I told her the engagement was over. For a few seconds, Lucy just stood there staring at me. Then the anger shifted into something closer to panic. When I said the engagement was over, Lucy's reaction changed almost immediately. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something closer to panic. She started talking faster, and her tone shifted from yelling to rapid explanations. She said I was making a huge mistake and that I was blowing a casual conversation completely out of proportion. According to her, couples say stupid things sometimes, and it does not mean the relationship is over. Then she said something interesting. She asked if I was really willing to throw everything away just because her friends made a few comments about me being boring. That was the first time she framed it like that. Not that she believed it. Not that she agreed with them. Just that they had said it. But the problem was I had heard the way she said it earlier. The tone. The way she presented it like a real concern instead of a joke. So I told her again that the decision was already made. Lucy tried switching tactics again. She said we should just go to sleep and talk about it tomorrow when everyone was calmer. She said I was clearly overthinking things and reacting emotionally. While she was saying all that, I picked up her suitcase and placed it just outside the apartment door. Then I set the box with the rest of her things next to it. Lucy stopped talking when she saw that. She stared at the door, then at the suitcase, then back at me. She asked if I was seriously kicking her out in the middle of the night. I told her she had just come from a night out with friends. One of them could pick her up, or she could stay with them. She said I was being insane. I opened the door and stepped aside. I told her she could come back tomorrow during the day to collect the rest of her things, but tonight she was leaving. Lucy stood there for several seconds like she was waiting for me to change my mind. When I did not move, the anger came back. She grabbed the suitcase handle hard enough that it scraped against the floor, picked up the box, and walked out into the hallway while muttering about how unbelievable I was. I watched her walk toward the elevator without looking back. Then I closed the door behind her and locked it. The apartment suddenly felt very quiet. For the first few minutes after Lucy left, I just stood in the living room letting the quiet settle. 4 years is a long time to share a space with someone, and when they suddenly are not there anymore, the silence feels different. Not dramatic, just noticeable. I walked through the apartment and picked up the few things she had left behind in the living room. A jacket on the chair, her phone charger by the couch. I placed them in another small box, so everything would be together when she came back for the rest. About 10 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Lucy. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Then a third time. After the fourth call, I picked up the phone and saw that she had also started sending messages. The first few were angry. She wrote that I was unbelievable and that she could not believe I threw her out over a conversation. Then she said I was acting like a child and that normal couples actually talk through problems. After that, the tone changed slightly. She started saying we needed to talk and that she was standing outside trying to figure out what to do. Apparently, she had walked down the street but had not actually left the area yet. I read the messages once. Then I opened the contact settings and blocked her number. Not out of spite. Just because there was nothing productive that conversation was going to add at that point. The decision had already been made, and I did not see any benefit in spending the next 3 hours arguing through text messages. After that, I blocked her on the messaging apps we normally used. Then I sat down on the couch for the first time since the argument started. About 5 minutes later, there was knocking on the door. Not aggressive banging like before. Just steady knocking. Lucy's voice came through the hallway asking me to open the door so we could talk like adults. I stayed where I was. Eventually, the knocking stopped. About 20 minutes later, I heard the elevator doors open and close again. That was the last I heard from her that night. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because of the breakup or anything dramatic. Mostly because the apartment felt different and my normal routine had been interrupted the night before. I made coffee and checked my phone out of habit. There were no messages from Lucy, which made sense because her number was already blocked. What I did see were 2 missed calls from an unknown number that had come in around 2 in the morning. I did not bother calling it back. Around 9, I started going through the apartment to gather the rest of Lucy's things. Clothes from the closet, shoes by the door, some toiletries from the bathroom. I packed everything into a few boxes and set them near the entrance so it would be quick when she came by to pick them up. About half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Lucy was standing in the hallway. She looked tired and annoyed at the same time. She was also holding her phone in her hand, like she had been trying to call someone repeatedly. The first thing she said was that I had blocked her. Not a question, just an accusation. I told her that was correct. She asked if I was seriously planning to handle a 4-year relationship ending by just cutting off communication. I explained that there was not really anything left to discuss. She had already made it clear she felt like she missed out on something by being with me. Lucy immediately tried to push past me into the apartment. I stepped into the doorway so she could not. Then I pointed to the boxes stacked next to the wall. I told her everything she still had in the apartment was packed and ready to go. That was when the argument started again. Lucy said I was being unbelievably cold and that no normal person would react this way to one comment. According to her, I had turned a small conversation into a complete breakup overnight. I told her the breakup happened the moment she said she needed to experience dating a bad boy before settling down. That was not a small comment. That was a statement about how she saw the entire relationship. Lucy stared at me for a long moment. Then she said something that made it very clear she still thought this situation would eventually swing back in her favor. Lucy crossed her arms and looked at me like the entire situation was temporary. Then she said something that honestly confirmed I had made the right decision the night before. She told me I was overreacting now, but eventually I would calm down and realize I had gone too far. According to her, once a few days passed, I would probably call her and apologize for kicking her out. She said people do not just throw away 4 years and an engagement over one conversation. I told her I already had. That answer clearly was not the one she expected. Lucy shook her head and said I was being stubborn. She said I always had this habit of making quiet decisions and refusing to budge once my mind was made up. For once I agreed with her. Because in this situation, that was exactly what I was doing. I reminded her that she had framed the entire conversation around missing out on something by choosing me. Not a joke. Not a passing thought. A real concern she brought home from a night out with friends. And once someone starts looking at their partner like the safe option they settled for, the relationship is already on borrowed time. Lucy tried one more time to argue. She said every woman has thoughts like that sometimes, and it does not mean they actually want to leave their partner. She said I was supposed to understand that instead of reacting like this. But the problem was I did understand. I understood that she did not see me as someone she chose because she truly wanted me. She saw me as the stable ending after the exciting part of life was supposed to be over. And I have zero interest in being someone's backup plan. So I picked up the first box and set it in the hallway next to her suitcase. Then I handed her the second one. Lucy looked at me for a few seconds like she was still waiting for the moment where I would change my mind. It never came. Eventually, she took the boxes, turned toward the elevator, and walked down the hallway without another word. I closed the door behind her again. The strange part is that the apartment did not feel empty anymore. It felt quiet in a good way. And if Lucy still wants to try dating a bad boy before settling down, she now has plenty of time to figure out how that works out for her.